Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, I am joined by Wes LaBar of LaBar's Guide Service in the Adirondack Mountains of New York. We discuss the history of the Adirondacks, public hunting opportunities, the landscape, and non-resident opportunities. Then we dive into aerial scouting tactics, migratory runways, tactical deer drives, a story of the last day double mountain bucks, solo hunting strategies, sign making, and much more. This episode is brought to you by the Spartan Forge app, which utilizes years of military background and machine learning to pull from millions of data points to accurately predict deer movement, including GPS data, 30 years of weather, academic and state research. The new app includes GPS mapping with incredible aerial imagery, offline dependability, deer prediction, weather updates, journal entries, and much more. You can use the code EastMeetsWest to save 20% off the Spartan Forge app at spartanforge.ai. And if you go over there and use that code on the website, you'll get a 14-day free trial if you're on the fence about it and you want to try it out. So you can try it out basically for free and see whether you like it or not. Tethered is a company founded on the principles of educating the hunting community on saddle hunting while creating the most innovative, lightweight, safe products for saddle hunting. They have mobile hunting gear options for all types of hunters and continue to push the envelope. And speaking of pushing the envelope, they just dropped their new carbon fiber saddle, the Vader platform, at the ATA show, and should be available later on this summer. To learn more about tethered and saddle hunting, head over to tetherednationcom. Maven is building the highest quality optics at half the price of their competitors through their direct-to-consumer business model. They want to create the best optics for the job, period. Their products are backed with a lifetime no-fault warranty and an incredible customer experience. Maven just launched the CRS-1 and CRS-2, the first rifle scopes in the award-winning C-Series line. So based on the popularity of the C-Series optics and requests from the customers, they developed a completely new lineup of rifle scopes at a lower cost. You can use the coupon code EastMeetsWest-GIFT for a free gift with any full-price optics order at mavenbuilt.com. Kip Folks, who is the co-founder of Under Armour, an avid hunter and just an all-around hard-working American. When I heard that he was building a brewery, I was excited to check it out. Since then, I've become friends with Kip, and Big Truck Farms has grown into what I would expect. He has been extremely supportive of this podcast and really hunting in general. So it went without saying that Big Truck would make a great partner of the podcast. The Big Truck name and icon promotes the idea of adventure and going past the unknown. They really embrace that mindset of hard work and the outdoor lifestyle on the farm with an earn a beer mentality. They support and host archery shoots, donate to veterans, and make damn good beer. Check out Big Truck Farms at btfbeer.com and visit the farmhouse in Parkton, Maryland. I think I'll be checking it out this weekend, heading down to meet up with Kip, hopefully. So I'm excited to get to go down there and check it out. So if you're in the area and you live in Maryland, you live in southern Pennsylvania, check out the farm. If not, head over to the website and see where you can get some beer. GoWild has been a partner of the show now for, 4 months or so, but I've been using the app since 2019, and it's been a wild year for censorship for hunters and anglers, and so that's why I've partnered with GoWild with how much censorship's been going on. And GoWild is built for outdoorsmen and women by hunters and anglers just like you. It's a free social community, and not only are your photos not censored, they're encouraged on GoWild. They give you points for things like sharing your trophies, gear reviews, and inviting friends. As you earn points, you unlock awesome rewards too, such as gift cards, free swag, knives, huge discounts on brands like Garmin and Tethered, and so much more. And if you get to create an account, you get $10 just for trying it out. So visit GoWild.com to get started and use the code EastMeetsWest to save 10% off of all gear, including tethered saddle hunting products. All right, on today's Mountain Buck Monday episode, or story of the week, I guess, the story comes from Thomas Macklin and from Virginia. So Thomas said, I headed into the backwoods of the Virginia National Forest on November the 30th, 2017 with my hunting buddy. We planned on hiking and hunting about a 6-mile loop. About a mile and a half deep, we found an active scrape on an old logging road. We decided to split. My buddy sitting 50 yards or so on the northeast of the scrape, and I went about 50 yards west of the scrape down the logging road. This was rifle season, so we would cheat a little on the wind. I took the downwind side, thinking if one comes in, he'll be scent checking the scrape. My buddy started smashing a rattle bag from his position. I sat for maybe 3 to 4 minutes peering down the trail. The old mountain warrior popped up from the side of the trail and gave me about 3 seconds to shoot. Down he went. So what an awesome story with being able to have your buddy there and having that group effort in it. And this buck's pretty cool looking deer. You can head over to East Meets West Hunt on Instagram or East Meets West Outdoors on Facebook and check it out. Such an awesome buck to come from the Virginia National Forest. Really big woods, rugged mountain country there. So go over, check that out, and submit your story. Easiest way is to send it into my email, beau@eastmeetswesthunt.com, and I would love to share your Mountain Buck Monday story. In other news, we have two of my most popular hats are back in stock on eastmeetswesthunt.com/shop. You'll go over in the rut hat and also the stealth trucker multi-cam hat. Those two hats just came back into stock, and I got a bunch of them. So check those out. If you've been waiting, if you were on the wait list, you should have gotten an email. So if you didn't, here's another heads up that they are back in stock and over on the website. So head over and check those out. And the last thing I wanted to mention here is the story that I wrote on my dad's buck stickers that you may or may not have heard on the podcast here, but the written form of that is now over on Free Range American, so you can read about it. Check that out. That's just freerangeamerican.us. So if you want to go over and take a look at that and just read that version of the story, you can definitely do that. And I guess there is something else I should mention, especially for a lot of you Western hunters. Wyoming's tag application is coming up here. So on January 31st for elk, you have to be in if you're putting in for Wyoming. So it's coming up here shortly, and I just wanted to make sure that I was giving as much update as possible here. Or actually, let me see here. Actually, I think I have that wrong. Nope, no, it is. Okay. Yep, it is the 31st. I was looking at the wrong date here. But yeah, so January 31st, get in for Wyoming elk application deadlines. And they're starting to roll in here. Arizona's not far behind it with February 8th. So if you're looking to hunt out west, they're starting to plan for some years ahead. It's really important to get over and take a look at some of these applications and understand it. I mean, I just did that podcast last week with 2 weeks ago, I guess now, with the Eastmans, Scott Reekers and Ike Eastman. And also I have an article that was on Free Range American that broke that down as well. So a lot of resources out there. I think now is the time to start thinking about it and applying. All right. So with that being said, I hope that you enjoy this podcast with Wes LaBar on hunting the Adirondacks. All right. We're live. Wes LaBar, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Beau. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I am excited for this one. You are a talented hunter and a very successful hunter in a region of the Appalachian range that I want to explore at some point. That's in the Adirondacks, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely a really big compliment there. And it's a crazy place up here. I have a pretty cool story just because I didn't grow up hunting in a family that did a lot of hunting. My father didn't hunt, my grandfathers didn't hunt, my uncles didn't hunt or anything like that. So to hear you say, "Oh yeah, you're talented" or whatever, it makes me feel good. I don't feel like I'm that talented yet, and I still have a lot to learn. But
oh, we all do. So, tell me a little bit about your background, kind of where you live at, those types of things. As far as what that's all about.
Okay, so like Beau said, my name is Wesley LaBar. I go by Wes. I'm 27 years old. I live in Minerva, New York, in the Adirondacks, and I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, and I lived there. That's where my parents met. I lived there till the age of 7, then moved up here to take over a family business that my dad is third generation. He grew up in the Adirondack Park here from when he was 7 years old till he graduated high school. And then, like I said, moved back.
What do you do as far as for your day job?
For my day job, I am a pipe layer. So I work in the construction field. I do construction, and I'm a pipe fitter. So I put water mains in the ground, water services, storm drains, all sorts of, anything related to road construction. And, they'll throw me on the asphalt crew from time to time, but my main thing is pipe fitting. So lay pipe for a living. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's I travel a lot, and but it's a prevailing wage job, so the money's definitely there. And then there's a layoff season around hunting season, so that kind of works out.
That's it's funny because that's something that I always joke about, that I wish I would have known. Someone would have taught me those types of things in high school, and it's like, what are you going to be when you grow up? Find a job where you can get off during hunting season.
Exactly. Or do something good, work for yourself, and you can, a couple of my buddies that I hunt with, they work for themselves, so they can take time off when they want to, and of course they bury themselves with work, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying I planned this from the start, because I definitely didn't, but I happened to get myself into a career field where, there is a layoff season. And as I work my way up the ladder, I'm sure they'll be keeping me on more or whatever. And it won't always be like these last couple of years, but yeah, so that's what I do. I live up here in the Adirondacks. It's a pretty cool place. It's really, really rural. Not a lot of, anything. I live in a town of 900 people, and it's 70% senior citizens. So it's real remote area. Like I was telling Beau right before the podcast started, I back up to just like right out my door behind my house to 32,000 acres of state land, and there's big pockets of state land all over. So it's really remote place, but I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's incredible. I guess when people think of New York, most people think of, New York City and that type of stuff. But, as a hunter, New York's got a lot to offer. I experienced New York for the first time this year, just a little bit. I've only been up there twice now. I went up there in archery season, then I was just up there this past weekend with the bow again, late season, and just kind of mostly scouting around and everything. But I have not been in the Adirondacks. I've never even visited there before, so that's why I was super interested in talking to you about it. And that area is as before we started recording, you were kind of saying it's kind of a best kept secret, sort of, just beautiful scenery, remote. You can do just about anything for someone that loves the outdoors.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's very remote. And like you said, I grew up telling people, oh yeah, I'm from New York. Oh, the city, how's the city? It's like, no, the Adirondack Park. And they're like, the Adirondack Park, I mean, it's the largest state park in the United States. And it's like, it's larger. I was reading one time, it's like larger than Yellowstone and a bunch of those other parks out in the Western United States combined. It's 6 million acres, 2.6 million acres of it is state land. So that's, access to hunting, fishing, hiking, boating, and the other 3.4 million of it is private. But I mean, you're talking so many opportunities up here for an outdoorsman and a sportsman. It's cool.
Yeah, and you were talking to me a little bit when you were texting me about the history of the Adirondacks, and you had some interesting information on that as far as how that kind of came to be as far as the Adirondacks as a whole, and and then also the culture of hunting that's there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the Adirondacks was created, I guess officially they say in 1892. It makes up 9,300 square miles, which is a fifth of New York State. They say it's like about the size of Vermont. So it was most popular. They say the Iroquois and the Algonquins were here. There's some people that will dispute that Native Americans ever lived here, but they definitely, did. And there's hard evidence of them using it as seasonal hunting grounds. That's something that they preserved for themselves to come up here and hunt with. But that was before the European settlement. And then once the European settlement came in, early 1800s, that's when the logging became big, early 1800s, like 1803. And then it really took off in the 1820s. And they said there was a good amount of deer up here before, like not a good, I guess I shouldn't say good amount, because they said like 1 to 3 deer per square mile before they came up here and logged it. And then after they logged it, there was 8 to 20 deer per square mile. And they the population of the deer when they logged it to the point to where there was like overpopulation. So that was really crazy. But the like I was saying, they came up here, people settled here for logging in the early 1800s. And then, from there people came up here hunting, and then they started realizing how good it was for hunting. So then they came up and started like guiding on the land, and that created a lot of conflict between the locals who were logging and made their living there, and then people hunting and guiding there, which was kind of created a conflict at the time, but it was something that they had to deal with. And then obviously the Native Americans didn't like it when the Europeans came and settled there. But
so when you say guiding, they were guiding for hunting?
For hunting, yeah. Really? Yeah. Some of the first guiding period in the United States of America, from the history that I've read, started in the Adirondacks, which is pretty cool.
Really?
And yeah, the guides back in the day, they almost used to be able to guarantee you a deer. I read stories up at the Adirondack Museum in Blue Mountain Lake where the guides, they would drive these deer into the water, and then the guides would paddle up on them and hold their tail so their client could kill the deer, and so they could basically guarantee the success, which is pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I know. It was wild.
So is there still much logging that goes on up there?
There is, but the APA and other, park agencies came in and really put the halt to the whole, now there isn't any logging on state land. They don't allow that anymore, which, for, guys like you and us is unfortunate, and to a lot of people, but because there is, a huge impact and logging on all different species and wildlife and mammals and stuff like that. But people that own private land, they do get it logged off because they realize the importance of it. But that's what also makes hunting up here hard in the Adirondacks, is that because there isn't the logging that there was back in the day, the forests are all mature, and so there's just not a ton of food between everything that eats, what a deer eats, the turkeys and all the other, mammals out there. So
yeah, it's not as much browse, I'm assuming,
no,
from that standpoint.
Yeah, you can go on a lake in the springtime fishing and sit on a boat in any lake in the Adirondacks and look around at the edge, and you can see the browse line perfectly. Really? Just like someone went around with clippers and clipped it perfectly. That's just because by the end of the spring, they're eating bark off the trees. It's really unfortunate. But
explain a little bit about the terrain and stuff of the Adirondacks. What does that kind of look like?
Okay, so the terrain is actually pretty sweet. And it's one of the reasons why I love hunting the Adirondacks, because of the logging and the way they went about things. There's so many of these edges that deer hunters like us like to hunt, so mixes between mature pine and oaks and just like those thick conifer, spruce, hemlock stands, and then switches back over to beech, like big beech cuts that are only, 20 to 40 years old. So you got all these, 5-inch around beeches to, 12-inch around. And there's just a real big, like, there's so much inconsistency to the land up here. I mean, yeah, obviously it's mountainous and everything, and there's rises and falls and beautiful guts and valleys and saddles. But as far as like the trees, like it's always changing. Like when I go for a hunt and I'll be like hunting up in an area, 1 minute for an hour, I might be still hunting through some wide open oaks where I can shoot 200 to 300 yards of areas. And then I'll come up over the mountain and I'm in beech whips that I can shoot only 10 to 20 yards, but it just provides this dynamite habitat for mature deer and deer like, in general to survive in, but like I said, there's that competition for food. And that's why they say, and I believe it's true from my experience being out there, that there's about only 7 to 8 deer per square mile in the Adirondacks. But there's areas that you get into that brings them together, and there's easily 20 deer per square mile in some areas, some, because there's days we go out in late season and see 20, 30 deer in a day.
Really? Oh,
absolutely. One of the hunts that, I don't know if I'll get in time to tell the story, but those 2 really big bucks that we shot on a hunt Sunday, which would be the last day of rifle season, we saw 25 deer in that hunt between the 6 of us. And that's just kind of, we were all in our spots sitting there, counting deer going in different direction. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that story because I do want to hear about that and have you. There's a lot of I think a lot of learning things you can pull from stories, and I like hearing them personally. So, yeah. But what I wanted to kind of transition to a little bit, with that terrain and the Adirondacks, it has a decent amount of elevation too, like as far as how, if you were to guess, or maybe from like the valley floor up to the top, how much feet and elevation change does that typically have? Like, do you have, is it 1,000 feet? Is it more than that? What does that kind of look like?
So from like valley floors where I hunt, and all over, but I hunt like near the Hudson, and the Hudson sits around up where I live, around like 1,000 to 1,200 feet. And mountains, some of them, like a lot of the mountains that I hunt around it, are 22,000, 21 to 26,800, So, but as you head towards the High Peaks region, the valley floors. So, those valley floors, I guess you're talking 1,000 feet, 800 to 1,000 feet in elevation changes is pretty typical.
Yeah. And it seems to, at least from what I've looked at on the maps, it seems to be like there's a bunch of different spurs and ridges that come off of the main ridges, and which is from a deer hunter that likes to hunt topography. That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. You could sit there and it's almost like you're at the beach and you're just seeing all these good looking ladies. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't know which one to look at. There's so many good spots to hunt.
Yeah. That's funny. And so what about, so if people were to go up there to hunt, or yourself, I mean, do you typically, because it's so close to your house, do you typically stay like at your own place, or do you go out and you camp? You have a cabin, or how does that work?
So I've always loved to do a drop camp, and I'm going to one day. I see myself doing that in the future, and as a part of my guiding business, because there's a big draw to that whole aspect of your backwoods experience, as drop camps and all. But to answer your question, no, I stay at my house and do all my hunting. If I got to get up at 3 a.m. to get to a spot I want to be to, I will. But I hunt, I get up early and hunt anywhere within an hour from my house. I have areas that I pick in the beginning of the season that I want to focus my attention on based off of food that I'll go and scout out in the early season. and I'll focus my attention in those areas. And then I will dedicate myself and challenge myself to go to 2 or 3, sometimes 4 different spots that are new every year, to just try and light a fire in a new spot. And maybe I see some good buck sign and I'm like, oh gosh, I got to focus some attention in here. But there's areas that I hunt that, that are oaks, and there's not a lot of oaks in the Adirondacks. So when I do find them, I try and capitalize on them as best I can. And there's times that I hunt down this one area where I'll have my cameras out in August, September, and October, and I'll get a picture of just like maybe 4 or 5 bucks in a span of 2.5 months, sometimes. And then there's different years where there's food in there, and I'll get 15 bucks on cameras in 2 weeks, different bucks, 15 different bucks on camera in 2 weeks. And over, I'm talking, a 1.5 mile square area or whatever. So but still, so to answer your question, I kind of just, pick different areas where I think I'm going to have some good luck with the bucks, and then challenge myself to find new areas each year. And then as the season goes on, is just when the whole Adirondack woods become unpredictable, or unpredictable on what kind of deer you're going to, see, because they come crawling out of the mountains. And that's when we have a lot of our success up here is late season, because you never know what you're going to see.
So if you were coming from, like, say, coming from Pennsylvania like I am, or somebody else from a different state, or is there options, like, is there campgrounds? Can you remote camp? Can you backpack in and set up camp? What, do they have any rules or anything around that?
Absolutely. So what New York State is really great for is they take care of the trail systems. They have tons of places to camp. Their website is actually really informative on that. The New York State DEC website, you can look up all the campsites for any lake and area. I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to say definite, but I'm pretty sure they'll have every campsite listed on every pond, lake, and stream in the Adirondacks that they have out there, because they're really good about that. That's definitely one thing I can salute the state of New York for doing. So as far as opportunities, absolutely. And I encourage people to do that, because, it's just kind of badass, to come up, go backwoods hunting like that. Like,
yeah, it's basically like, like you could get the same experience that you would on a Western hunt, but in the Appalachian mountains. Yeah, in the Adirondacks, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just as rugged, it's just as hard, it's just as challenging. People, I think, I've said this and I've heard this for a long, long time, but I'm not dead set on it, but people say that the Adirondacks is arguably the hardest place to hunt deer, just because of the terrain and how thick it is, and the makeup of the land and stuff like that. But it's really cool. I think that's why a lot of guys like you and I love it, because it's very, very challenging.
Yeah, and there's a lot of roadless areas too, right, throughout the whole thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of old dirt roads that'll take you like miles in the woods, where you can just pop a camp up and whatever. Sometimes there's designated campsites, but then also you can get a hold of your local DEC officer. Like, say you are someone from out of state or in state that wants to do a drop camp, you can get month-long permits or 2-month-long permits in the early season to put a camp up in that location. You just have to tell them where you're going to do it, and most likely that DEC officer is going to come and check on you. But I think that's pretty cool too, because you can leave a camp and a tent up there. There's roads just up the road from me. There's dirt roads where people leave a tent right off the side of a dirt road all year long, just so they can come up from the city and have a place to kind of camp out and whatever. So, definitely a lot of opportunities for, to be able to stay up here. Which is kind of cool, because there's not a lot of hotels or anything, so
yeah.
Once you kind of head past my house, you're really heading into the middle of nowhere. So
Yeah, that's so awesome that you have that ability to be able to do that and find those types of, remote places to be able to go into. And from buying my hunting license this year for New York non-resident, it really wasn't that bad as far as the cost compared to, a lot of the other states that I've been to and hunted. I mean, I I should have the numbers in front of me. Maybe but I want to say it was like $130 is
Really?
what yeah.
See, that's funny because it's funny you asked me because I was just about to ask you if you remembered because we go to Arkansas every year. My mom's from Arkansas, and so I do a little deer hunting down there. I buy a 3-day license, and you can shoot a buck or a doe or 2 does or 2 bucks, and it's $130. But I'm going to Ohio for late season muzzleloader. Actually, I've been planning this trip for the last couple of weeks for my bachelor party. I'm getting married in June, so we're going. Me and the boys are heading out to Ohio for
Nice.
the 8th to the 11th. Yeah, that's fun. That's gonna be fun. I'm super stoked. And that license is around $300. So that's steeper. But like I said, the only out of state license I've ever bought was like Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, maybe, and Ohio now. So.
Yeah, Ohio used to be like 150 to $160 when I first started buying it, and now it just keeps climbing. Incredible. And that was not that long ago. I mean, I started hunting Ohio in 2014, so it wasn't like that long ago, and the prices have just jumped up. But so I looked up I do have the numbers in front of me now. So the non-resident license is $100, but then for a bow hunting privilege, you got an extra $30. And if you want a muzzleloading privilege, it's another $30. But it's pretty reasonable to be able to do that and to be able to get, depending on the area you're hunting, but 2 buck tags essentially. I don't know if that's the same in the Adirondacks or not.
Is that what you get? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, I was able to get an either sex bow and muzzleloader tag and then a regular deer tag. That
only.
Yeah, that was buck only. Yep.
Except for that's exactly what we get. So
except for if you use it in I can use that buck only tag now in the late season for a doe. I was actually reading it because it was kind of confusing, and so I was going through the whole chart and trying to figure that out. And there was an exception that said that you could use that tag for nobody. Make sure you read it yourself. I'm not planning on shooting a doe up there this year, but make sure you read it yourself because it is kind of confusing, but that's what I had gathered from it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, but
yeah, that's neat. See, I didn't know that, but that's definitely encouraging. I mean, I guess we spend a lot more money on different hunting gear and stuff like that. So all in all, it's really not too bad for out of state.
Oh, exactly. So when you're, as I'm looking at, as I've looked at photos and maps and stuff of the Adirondacks, there's a lot like with the differences. It looks like there's some areas that have, higher, almost like peaks. It looks like almost like Western mountains. And then there's kind of like the finger ridges that run off of them and go in a different direction. How are you when you're looking at like an aerial map? How are you kind of picking areas that jump out to you as something that you should focus on? What's kind of your e-scouting strategy?
E-scouting strategy. Yeah, that's a really good question. I hope I don't get too far off on different tangents, but because I'm known for it. So, maybe when you were looking at that map, when you saw those real big mountains that were like, you could see rock faces on them and stuff. That was probably the High Peaks region, if I were to guess. And then coming off the High Peaks region, you have those huge mountains that are big, long fingers. That's still like just, part of the High Peaks region. But then when you get down towards me, they're more kind of like dome shaped, not too aggressive, only 1,000-foot elevation changes. And I've yet to hunt the High Peaks region, and I will someday, and I want to get good at hunting up there. But I work with a lot of people that hunt the High Peaks region, and they definitely don't see deer like I see deer down by me. They say up there they'll find a good buck every 3 to 5 miles up there of like hunting. And these guys are good hunters, but that's a lot of, like I can go do 3 to 5 miles right now, it's walking out my door and see several small bucks and maybe like 2 or 3 small bucks and one big buck within 5 miles. But, up there, they are like real remote. So by me, when I'm looking for terrain, I'm looking for south facing slopes. I really like those because I think a lot of deer feel comfortable there. It's cold up here, we're up in the mountains. I think the deer like bedding there. And I feel like they definitely keep a big, steep south facing slope within their area a lot because like I was saying, it just feels like home to them. They like them. It's cold, and I've just found a lot of deer sign on there. Also, I find a lot of my oak trees there, which is where I like to hunt and capitalize on good food sources, oak trees. The beeches do better when they're on the south facing slopes, and beech nuts is another huge food source. So my south facing slopes, I like obviously hunting saddles early season, for sits, for cruising bucks, fingers. If I'm going into an area that maybe I haven't hunted before and I see a big finger, maybe facing south, facing slope, maybe not, I'll definitely go and check it out. A lot of the times when I'm looking at e-scouting and I'm looking on the satellite and from a distance, maybe from a road looking up on a mountain, when I see, and it's common in the Adirondacks, when I see a lot of pine and hemlock on top of a mountain, and when it starts to tip off of that upper 1/3 that we talk about into a mixture of open hardwoods, I like to go definitely check that out too, because you'll see a lot of buck movement around that. I mean, and that's the same in a lot of different areas,
Yeah.
So, I like my edges, my fingers, saddles. I like hunting up higher than what people would do. I hunt up pretty high, even if there's
As far as high in the tree, you mean?
high up on the hill, like up on the mountain, like really that upper 1/3, like, we talk about. So I like going up there and you'll hear that. But so yeah, it's and like you were seeing earlier, the Adirondacks is filled with so many of these little areas. It's sometimes hard to explain, to someone that maybe doesn't know, but like, when you see an area on a map and you're like, you can just look at it and there's like, maybe there's one of those figure eights with a pinch point, and then you got a little bit of a nice south facing slope at the end of a finger, and you're just like, ooh, the Adirondacks is filled with a bunch of those.
Yeah, so. No, and I have a map pulled up on my other screen right now as I'm looking at it as I'm talking to you here, and it sounds very similar to what you're looking for, to what, like, say I would look for in Pennsylvania and the big woods. You're looking for diversity, and you're looking where some of that terrain makes it favorable for the deer to move and kind of the pinch movement together.
Absolutely. And another thing that I don't know if it's something that you guys notice in Pennsylvania, but a lot of the deer yard here. And what I mean by that is that they come out of the mountains and they head towards towns where there's people that have bird feeders and feed the deer and stuff like that. And I know of and seen and have hunted a lot of migratory runways. I don't know if you've ever familiar with those.
No.
They're runways, but they're a different type of runway. If you know the area and how deer funnel on these migratory runways, and I told you how deer funneled, and you went in there and you saw this runway, you would automatically know it's a migratory runway. I know guys in the Adirondacks who set trail cameras up on these migratory runways in certain times of the year, like around this time, for a month-long period, and they'll get 500 pictures of deer on this migratory runway, all heading in one direction, not one deer heading back up this way. So we hunt a lot of those migratory runways. I think the reason why we have success on them is bucks that are young of age, that are born way up in the mountains, they migrate down. they may come down into town and be like, wow, there's a lot of does in here. Wow, there's a lot of deer in here. And then when they become 2 and 3 years of age, they remember that and they cruise down those same runways and head into those same areas that they saw a lot of deer. And the town that I live in is a deer yard. You can go around town right now late at night and you can probably count on certain nights over 100 deer just in different fields all around the town. Say you took a drive. So that's another strategy. I hunt these migratory runways because these deer have to migrate to survive, and they depend on humans in ways.
Yeah. Is that because the weather pushes them out of the mountains?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The snow, the snow gets so deep. I mean, I remember we got a snowstorm 2 years ago, early November like 7th. It was 24 inches, 2 feet. And we were, there was like a hunt my buddy and I did behind my house. We had 27 deer ran by him one time. Wow. Out of these one little 90-acre piece, next to my house. So
when you say migratory runway, is that is it basically like one trail that the deer that are moving down, or can it be, a square mile or like a mile wide area? What do those look like? Like if you were to, can you look at a map and say this is a migratory runway, or how do you know?
It's essentially is because, the deer are heading towards town because they have to head towards, where they can depend on humans. And then you basically take, heading from a town like where I live in, and you're heading out into these big areas of woods. You can kind of look at the way the map, the terrain is, and like maybe along a big river like the Hudson, and that funnels those deer down through there. And then plus, like I said, I know guys that I hunt with that have put cameras up on these runways around the outskirts of the town I live in different areas. And, the deer are all heading in one direction over a month-long period. So it's basically, the terrain that funnels them. They're heading towards humans because that's what they're depending on. And then the camera, the data that we've got, shows all these deer heading, in one direction. So, and they've done that for a long time. Like, I mean, over 100 years or more since people have been settling up here and, stuff like that. There's always been deer yards in certain areas you'll hear about. And I think different types of forests attract deer too. Like, they head towards all, big hemlock patches and stuff like that where they can feed on browse and stuff.
Have the cover and everything from the
and then
thermal
also,
cover.
Another thing that, I didn't just think of till now is that all of the logging in the Adirondacks is private land, and people that own land that are getting it logged, live closer to town. So they're coming to those cuts, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
that definitely is what keeps a lot of deer around town. So,
yeah. And what would make them, I wonder what makes them go back up into the mountains?
It makes you wonder, you know what I mean? I guess if I was a buck, I get it. You know what I mean? He's going up there for protection. He's away from anyone. He doesn't have to worry about anybody. He knows where he can come down and see some does when he wants to. And that's why, I feel like some of these bucks are so hard to kill sometimes, is just because, they can come out and get what they want when they want to. But I guess that's anywhere,
Yeah. Is it all right? So can you break down kind of the different seasons that you have? Because I know that northern zone, as they call it in New York, is different than other areas as far as, archery season versus different gun seasons and how that kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, that's why I like New York State, is because we have a really long season and definitely a long gun season. So September 27th every year is the beginning of early bow season. And that runs like 10 consecutive days till the end of the next weekend. Let's see. So it's September 7th. Yeah, it opens on the 27th, no matter when that starts. So it's like a 10-day long season, and then it ends on a Friday. And then for a week after bow season is a week of muzzleloader season for exactly 7 days. So it ends that Friday. And then from there opens our rifle season, and that goes to the first weekend in December. So we have like a 5-6 week long rifle season.
Okay. So is your rifle season in November then?
It is. It starts the last Saturday in October.
Okay. So it's right in the prime rut. You get rifle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's
it's pretty
awesome.
sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice. I mean, I've yet to get to where I'm so confident as a hunter that I'm just going to hunt with a bow from here on out. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of like, just kind of look at it like Lanny Benoit and Hal Blood, where it's just like, you know what? I like my rifle. I'm used to my rifle. It's big woods, and I get just as tickled of shooting a buck, than, So I shot deer with a bow before, but and I am going to challenge myself to seek for those 5 and 6 year old deer with in the Adirondacks with a bow one day. I just haven't got good enough yet. I don't feel like.
Yeah, it's already hard enough from that standpoint.
Exactly. I'm not as good as like you and your dad, where you guys are killing these monsters in the big woods all the time. But
just remember someday, though, that our seasons are different though too. So we have it is bow season during the rut, where you guys are already into a rifle season at that standpoint. So if you're carrying a bow out there while everybody else has a gun, that's you're at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Exactly. It's like, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and in the rut up here, I have a interesting thought on all that. I feel like, and people have told me that this is true, and maybe this is just a personal opinion, and I've shared this a lot with people, but since I've hunted deer up here, I've never seen a consistent rut pattern in the deer. And I don't know what dictates the rut coming sooner or later. But for instance, last year, 2020, my friend Austin Williams, I'm sure you saw a picture of the buck. He shot a 151 inch. It was aged at 8.5 or 9.5 years old by the taxidermist. 151 inch, just monarch of a buck, chasing a doe, broad daylight, 4:15 in the afternoon, in the middle of wide open oaks, October 30th. And he was on a hot, mature 3, 4, 5-year-old doe. And then this year, the rut didn't get crazy until the 20th of November. And so there's never been a real consistency in the Adirondacks where I've seen okay, when I go in the woods on November 8th through the 10th, this is when I see the most bucks. Sometimes it's the 30th and the 31st of October. Sometimes it's not until the 20th of November and then to the late season. And I've heard this before. And like I said, I think some of it is that there's so few deer in the Adirondacks and so few mature bucks to breed those does. These does get in a vicious cycle of these bucks aren't breeding them until January, late December, January. So these does are having their fawns later in the spring. So then when that doe comes into heat, she's coming into heat later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she's going to come into heat later. So it's just this vicious cycle. And also it's terrible because it's also what creates a lot of decline in the deer population, because the does are getting born so late in the spring that they go into winter. It's 2.5 feet of snow, and that doe is only 60 pounds still. She's still a small deer because she was born so late. So then she dies because she can't make it. So when I hunt down in Arkansas, the rut comes every single time, every single year, right on the dot, all the time. And it's consistent in the Midwest. I don't care what anyone says. It's not consistent up here. I've seen blood from a doe's urine in the snow mid-October, and I've seen it walking around in January, so it's not, I think that's something that, maybe makes it more challenging to hunting up here.
Yeah,
maybe not, but it's definitely something that I've noticed in my 20 years of hunting up here. So
yeah, definitely. That's an interesting observation that you guys have there. And I'm no biologist, but it makes sense from what you're explaining.
I honestly don't know what makes a doe come into heat at a certain time. I imagine, weather and time of year obviously have to do something with it, but I definitely don't think this Adirondacks is one of the places where it's like, oh, all the does are in heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, which I think is actually, it kind of benefits us because it keeps these bucks searching and searching and searching. But in the last 4 years, I've killed a buck that was, 3 of them were 4 years old and one of them was 5 years old. And none of them one of them weighed 165 pounds. But the 2 bucks we shot this year, they were both mature bucks. They gutted out at 148.
Okay.
So these deer literally, what I'm getting at is these deer literally run themselves to death. There was a buck that was found in Scroon Lake. It scored over 140 inches. There was not a bullet hole in it. It was found dead the last day of muzzleloader season. And they think that it just ran itself to death. Because literally they're just searching for does around here. And there's just miles of vast land for them to go on, forever and ever and ever. And then plus the never ending rut of does coming into heat. And they just.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And again, someone may correct me on, typically with the rut, when does come to heat, it has to do with the decrease in the photo and the time of year. And that depends on where you're at in the country. But when you have such low deer populations like that, and there's not enough bucks to feed all of the does, then they'll keep coming back into estrus. And then that's like what you're saying is you run into that issue. And I actually had one taxidermist explained this to me too, with like even different areas in Pennsylvania, how they were different. Like where I'm at, the buck to doe ratio is actually, population isn't good, but the buck to doe ratio is good. Typically the does are getting bred for the most part in the first rut, and there's not as many, except for some of the younger ones that are coming in later, where areas that don't have a really good buck to doe ratio, more does to bucks from that standpoint, that they can't get to them all. And especially when they're after searching for them, when there's not that many to begin with from like where you're at there. And it's interesting. And again, I'm no biologist there, but just putting together kind of pieces and making my own thoughts and opinions on it. But that's interesting. With that, what are some of the typical, hunting strategies or things that you like to do from that standpoint? Talking about sitting in a stand or tracking or still hunting, drives, like all those types of things. What are some of the ones that you feel like are the ones that give your odds of success the most?
So that's a good question, and I was waiting for it. A lot of people, like, you hear of the whole deer drive. That was like definitely a culture of hunting back in the day. The Native Americans in the Adirondacks actually used to fall trees and stack brush and funnel deer off mountains to make them run into water and run into like areas where a bunch of Indians were with bows so they could kill them. So like the whole strategy of like doing deer drives has been around since for forever, which I think is pretty badass, because it's fun getting together with some friends, and doing some deer drives and stuff. But as far as like my strategy, I don't like calling what I do deer drives, and you'll hear a lot of people say this these days, because deer drives has made a bad name for itself. Like when I think of a deer drive, there's these people that hunt near us, and I'm not going to say their last name, but nobody really likes them. They shoot does during rifle season. They're just an outlaw family. There's been rumors, like I've heard guys, they bring trumpets in the woods, and to move these deer and just make a scene, you know what I mean? And yell and hoot and holler. As far as like my strategy, I call them hunts. I will position, say I'm hunting with friends, maybe with clients in an area on a mountain that maybe wouldn't make sense to them. And then I'll go up and, try to make a loop to them. But the way I approach where I think a buck might be, I put them in a spot, set up with the wind in a certain location coming across, in which I think the buck is going to loop down into their area. I don't always just, you stay here, I'm going to go way out around you and just zigzag and scare everything to you. Like there's areas where big mature bucks run and head to, and they'll head for different notches and different bluffs and different swamps and different places where they can hide, where I'll set up my clients, say I'm going to do that type of, hunt, or some people might call it a drive, which, like I'm saying, I'm not calling it a drive, but I'll position them where I think that mature deer is going to come through. If it's a group of me and my friends, yeah, we'll spread out in a line in a good area of, some of us will be up by bedding, some of us will be in the food, some of us will be down on some transitional runways. We'll sit for, like how we killed those big bucks the last weekend. We sat for 4 hours. 3 of us sat in food. 1 of us sat in a transition between food and bed, and the other one sat on just a runway. And we all saw deer doing what they do, feeding and moving. And then when my one friend didn't get a shot at that really big buck, it ended up coming out to one of our other friends, which is, the way we plan our hunt, because we go into the woods to get something on the ground. We all want to learn. We all want to, have success, and we want to kill big bucks, but we position ourselves to make that happen, and with it being so thick up here, sometimes you don't get a shot. So, someone listening to this might call it a drive or whatever, but no, we strategically set ourselves up for success. I sit for a while, and then 2 of our buddies will go out and hunt their way back to the watch line or where our guys are sitting. And, I always like being the quote unquote driver, because I'd rather see the buck before you do, because I might get a shot at him, Yeah. So like I'm driving, you know what I mean? And I like to be in the guy on my feet. And a lot of, how we got good at, setting people out and putting people in good areas is, like I was saying when we were texting, is, I obviously have a guide service for those that, I don't know, maybe we didn't mention that or not, but I do have a guide service up here in the Adirondacks. I'm a licensed guide, and I've done it for 4 years, and the last 3 years I've done it on my own. And I will put my clients out in different areas, and hopefully none of them get offended for doing this, but a lot of it, is learning deer as a deer hunter. But they're kind of like my guys I use for scouting. I'll put them out. I'll go try to work a mountain back towards their area, and then maybe I bump the buck or whatever, and I'm like, use them like, okay, what did you see for deer? Where did he come from? Which way did he move? Did he head through here? Oh yeah, this person. Oh, I saw a deer. They, 2 does came from this direction. And then also a spike came from this direction, but the big bucks came from this direction, and just having people out there in the woods, guiding them, is kind of like live eyes in the woods, like we use for cameras and stuff like that. So it's been a strategy that I've used as my clients out there. And, I've had a lot of success with my clients. I've had a lot of clients shoot some nice bucks, and rarely do I have anybody that comes and hunts with me that is just like, I had an awful time. I mean, I can't remember, maybe 1 or 2 people that just, the big woods style of hunting and getting up real early and hiking in 1.5 miles to sit in 20-degree weather for 3 or 4 hours before I get to you isn't always someone's idea of like a dream hunt. But,
Yeah.
No, and a lot of people love the experience, because the Adirondacks is beautiful. And if you can just take it in for what it is, and just enjoy the scenery, then you'll always have a good time. But I think that's anywhere hunting.
Yeah, but I think what you were saying about like, taking that information that you learn from the clients and stuff. I mean, that's just smart. That's just smart hunting, is being able to gather that intel and utilize that for future occasions, and just continually making your clients' experiences better and your own, and just learning that, constantly. And
I don't want people to think that I'm using them as like puppets in a bad way, but like, I always put my clients in the best spot for success. You know what I mean? But, as hunters, I think anybody, like you and I both, we go into the woods and we're always constantly thinking about deer hunting and whitetail hunting. And we come up with these theories in our mind, and we go out there to prove or disprove them, or say, hey, I was kind of right, but this is what was really going on. You know what I mean? So kind of using, that in the same, scenarios.
Yeah, no, I understood what you meant. I was just helping with the clarifying it there. And with deer drives, like that was something that still is, big in my family during gun seasons. Like that's just a tradition to do that. And sometimes we'll have it where it's more of a traditional drive where you have, maybe, 3 sitters and 4 people they're pushing, and you set people up and you go through some of these clear cuts or these thickets or whatever it would be. But they're all not, they're all very tactically thought out and used from history doing these types of drives. Or like in 2020 when I'd killed my biggest rifle buck, that was a one man kind of, I guess you call it a drive, where my dad came across this mountain based off the way the wind was and where we thought the deer could be bedding at the buck, and came around and just basically wind bumped it. And then, we had to be set up in the right spots that were spots that the deer would feel safe exiting his, bedroom and to go out. He wasn't gonna, just go across this wide open woods, but there's this little transition that was like a bench you couldn't even see on a map essentially, but just kept him covered enough that he'd slide out that. And that's what ended up happening. And it's a very, very useful way. And for people that don't hunt, the big woods or anything, it's not like going and driving out a woodlot like in farm country. Like this is very different. It's still very difficult way of being able to do that. And it's a great tactic that's legal. And I have respect for people that can figure it out. And hey, there's obviously those that give it a bad name. Like you said, there's those out there, and just don't be those guys.
When you think of the guys that drive deer, you think of the guys that shoot spike horns on opening day. And that's not us. You know what I mean? And a lot of the times when we do that type of hunting where we set up a bunch of guys and then a couple guys still hunt, that's when it's me and the boys, my day ones, my big woods, big buck hunter dudes. Or it's like when I have a group of clients, it's just like a lot of guys. And usually when I have a lot of guys in one group, they're a bunch of beer drinking, deer hunting, ready to lay lead guys. So it's like, all right, let's, do some drive type style huntings. But if that's not what they wanted to do, then if they wanted to sit, then I'll get them sitting. But like a lot of times when it's just a client, maybe one or just a couple or father, son, we'll do a lot of sitting. I've had some guys say, hey, I just want to follow you through the woods. And it's like, all right, I mean, if you're going to pay me to do that, we'll do some still hunting, if you want to just, when you see me get down on one knee, if I point, like, look, maybe there's a big deer or something, I've had people come up and want to learn to do some tracking and stuff like that, which is fine. But when I book a hunt with clients, I ask them what they're looking for and what they want to do. And because I want to cater to their needs and their wants, and I want to satisfy them, and I want to give them the experience that they want to. I mean, a lot of the time they say, hey, you're the professional. What do you want? What do you think is the best, strategy? And then we'll go from there. You know what I mean? But the woods are big, and you got to be fit, and you got to be able to, the deeper you go, the more success you have. And that's, so it's not for everyone, but I try to do my best for my clients to, suit the fit to what they, what they want and what they need and what they're looking for.
So I think it'd be a good time to hear that story of the 2 bucks there that you guys had shot. And you've alluded to it a couple times here, and I'm ready for the story.
Okay. Yeah. So it's actually, it's a weekend long story. We got in there Saturday. It's one of my hot spots, but I've never hunted that spot. The last weekend of season, I'm usually.
So when is the last weekend of season, to give a date to it?
It's the first weekend in December. It's always the first weekend in December, no matter what date that falls on. Like sometimes our season's longer because it falls on like the 8th or something like that, or the 11th. But this year it fell on the 5th, so which is fine. But so it was last weekend. I got like my 5 main dudes with me, and then plus a couple other guys. And I had already filled my tag, but we're hunting with the boys and we're all out there to, get some big deer on the ground, so it's like learn some country and find some, good bucks. And we ended up going down and hunting some acorns, and I put 2 of my buddies on watch and 3 of us went down to sit in the oaks. And then we were going to still hunt these oaks over to my other 2 buddies. My one friend saw 19 deer before we started still hunting by 9:30, and the other one saw 8. So and then my friend Ross and I, we grunted in 2 4-pointers on the way in, and we saw some deer, stop, grunted them. That was pretty cool. They were raking the leaves and acting all tough, and that was fun. So sat down in the oaks, did the still hunt. One of them guys saw a good glimpse of a buck, but didn't end up getting them. So that's how the first half of that morning went. On Saturday, we saw, like 5 deer or whatever. And then we did another hunt where 2 of us went down towards another town and actually put 1.5 miles of woods between us. And we just still hunted this flat that had oaks on it, and the deer piled off it. We think by the end of the day, to wrap that day up, we saw, we think 45 to 55 different deer that day, which is crazy. But like when I'm talking about, they're just yarding up. And we saw 7 different bucks. It was like 5 or 6 spike horns, and then like 2 or 3 2.5-year-old bucks, and one of them got killed. So that's how our Saturday went. But we were like halfway through the second hunt of the day, and my friend and I were on the radio. We had these Garmins. We can see each other, we're moving through the mountains. We were like, I know where I'm hunting tomorrow. I was like, tomorrow we're going to come in here and kill a absolute giant. I was like, I just feel it. I know there's going to be deer in here. He's like, yeah, I agree. So the next morning, this is Sunday, last day of season. We set up, myself, my buddy Austin, Griffin, and Tyler. So there's 4 of us, and then 2 of them went and walked all the way down the river, got out in front of us and started hunting it. They didn't start hunting to us until 10 o'clock. It took them from 7 a.m. to 9 to hike down quietly to where they were going to start the hunt. They had 1.5 miles of land between us. As soon as he started hunting this way, he had caught a glimpse of that really big double-browed 10-pointer that was, big 130-inch deer. And buck went running out through. He didn't get it shot. And then, so they're still hunting out. We all were seeing a few does feeding and stuff like that. And so now the deer's all in between us, and we're super excited because we all know it. And we're like, oh my gosh, here we go. There's like a big deer between us, and so there an hour goes by and we're still just kind of watching some does feed around. All of us we're all kind of seeing some deer. My buddy Adam Ross, we call him Ross, he shot a really nice 8-pointer, which was that other good sized buck. He was cruising up through some beach whips on the edge of the big standing oak. And he just basically, those deer just came walking out in front of him. There are just so many deer down in that one little area. We just kind of caught a pocket of deer in there. He shot that one buck. It was with another 2.5-year-old 6-pointer. He said would have scored like 80 inches, which is a respectable Adirondack buck. And then they were hunting along. I don't know if it was the shot that scared him, but all of a sudden I looked down this ridge and I was actually making like a little short clip. And I was like, I don't know, sometimes I'll just make a short clip about, oh, it's Sunday, last day of season, we're seeing some deer, had a good morning sit so far, just kind of like something you would see on a hunting channel, just me making a funny video. And I'm making this one video and I have it on my phone and I look down and all of a sudden that big rack buck came out to me. He's standing down there with the doe. Anyways, he takes off running and he goes down and my buddy Griffin, I don't know if they winded me or whatever, but my buddy Griffin ended up shooting him. He was running out towards like the last hunter and then all of a sudden took a hard swing to the right and Griffin shot him at 3 yards from him. The deer, he thought he was going to run him over and he came up and he pulled up. All he saw was brown. He just shot and and he went like 20 yards and he piled up. So within like 10 minutes, 2 big rack bucks got shot. But we like to think we saw probably 25 deer out of that hunt, different deer, because just counting which way, which direction they headed and who saw what deer and stuff like that. About $5 in that one hunt, which is like, I'm talking about late season strategies and why I've killed all my big bucks in late season. I think, just the whole, I go back to the migrating and the migratory runways and just the winter weather, bringing them out of the mountains. I think those bucks are looking for those last does, and they know where all the does end up going. And they remember when they were a little kid, their mom bringing them into town where all these other deer are. So then they all end up in these food sources down, closer towards my town. And I think we just capitalized on that day. So
yeah, and the food with the oaks being there is obviously king, and is what brought those deer in from all over, from the sounds of it.
Absolutely. But all those spots that, I've hunted down there a lot, and we didn't get in the line. As much as it sounds, we didn't get in the line and just drive them to each other. Like each of those spots, I have, a couple of them I have stands set up on. A couple of them are spots that I've sat for 10, 12 years that, one of my best friend's fathers showed us a couple of these spots. Like we were strategically set up to where we knew these bucks were going to come out to us and stuff like that. So we definitely put our knowledge into that one. And plus just figuring out where those deer were that weekend, and it paid off for sure.
What if a guy or a girl that was going up there to hunt and they were by themselves? What would you think a strategy would be for them from that standpoint?
I could go pretty far into this. Obviously I'm someone that likes to do a lot of e-scouting. So if I was said person, I would be looking for some big chunks of state land that look more remote than others, because remoteness is, getting away from other people is what I like to do. And I think is good, but finding these dirt roads where these state lands are, where the state land is. And you can also find, like for someone who's maybe not comfortable with venturing out and doesn't have a Garmin or GPS, find state land trails. And you can get on these different trails. They're well-marked trails. DEC keeps them clean cut. For them, I would go up and this is really hard in the Adirondacks, but try and find a food source. If you can know what an oak tree looks like, you find a good stand of oaks, look for the deer runs coming in and out of the oak trees. And for people that don't know what like runway or deer runs are, I've heard some people ask me, like, what are they? They're trails that are beaten down into the earth that you can tell the deer are on, and they're usually in between bedding and food. So if you can get on those, deer travel them a lot of the times between morning and night. I would recommend just, if you're coming up to the Adirondacks, trying to find a deer trail or cross a deer trail that looks like it's heavily used. Areas of wetlands in the Adirondacks, like swamps, along edges of swamps, can really be good for finding those deer trails. Deer use swamp for protection and bedding, especially bigger bucks, and you'll find some, usually some rubs around there. If you know what a finger is, I know that's kind of like a term for someone that knows, talking about maps a lot, like a finger or a saddle, as you'll hear Beau and talk about a lot in his podcast, between two mountain peaks or two higher areas of ground. Those are really good areas for cruising bucks. I find a lot of deer sign, a lot of buck sign in what I call feeder streams, which are streams that come out of mountains that are in between saddles or in valleys and low points of these mountains. You'll find a lot of deer activity in there. And then I use feeder streams a lot of times to sneak up into areas of land, because the water, the noise from the water can cover your
get that downhill thermal the whole time.
Yeah, thermals. Yep. You can walk in the water, and then when you're heading up those streams, you can, a lot of times when you're heading up a mountain, your deer trails and your deer lines and the way they travel is on the topographic lines. So you'll be crossing those said deer trails that I'm talking about. This is just for somebody, I'm generally speaking, if you're coming up in the Adirondacks and you see a piece of state land, look for those feeder streams, walk up them, look for your deer trails. Sometimes if I'm in a new area and I get on a deer trail that's heavily traveled and it's like, holy smokes, I'll just follow it, see where it leads. It's going to lead to food or more bedding. Cause that's all deer do is bed, feed and try and keep from being killed and to repopulate, it's, you got to simplify it down and think like that. I overthink it a lot.
How much weight put on sign? I haven't heard you mention as far as rubs or scrapes or anything. Do you look at that much as far as like trying to figure out if a mature deer's in the area or have that in?
Absolutely. I do a lot of, when I kill my biggest bucks by myself, and the guys I hunt with, generally we kill our biggest bucks by ourselves. So I don't want people to think that we're always just hunting in parties or whatever, but I hunt a lot of times on deer trails in the Adirondacks that have scrapes on them that are on the low side of doe bedding areas and in between food and bedding, in between food and bedding on deer trails that have, community scrapes or regular scrapes on them, because, just like, someone like Beau would know, or some more experienced hunters, a lot of those bucks like to travel the downwind side of those bedding areas. And if there's those runways that are on those downside, areas of the bedding, they'll lay scrapes to see what does are coming through those areas. And they'll also wind check them. And I'll see a lot of bucks, sitting in those types of areas. But to answer your question, yes, I hunt scrapes, and yes, I put a lot of my cameras on rubs. You've heard of the buck I killed tracking this year. I found him and killed him a week and a half after I got him on camera for the first time. I had cameras in the area for 3.5 months, and I had a camera on a signpost rub, which is a tree that that same buck will rub year to year to year, but also multiple other bucks will come in and rub year to year to year. And it's usually on a runway that's traveled and, on bucks loops and traveled by a lot of does too. So,
it's interesting. Signpost rubs were something I've always noticed, but I didn't put a whole lot of thought to
until people started bringing it to light.
Yeah. But I mean, I always knew that the relevance of them, but not until I ran cameras on them, because I've never taken rubs into a whole lot of account, because I found areas that hold really big bucks that don't have big rubs. But I've also found that if you do have signpost rubs, that's a very good travel area. And when I've ran cameras on them, I have a cell camera on one right now that even though that they maybe 1 or 2 bucks will hit that rub during the year, there'll be a lot of deer that travel next to it. It's kind of like a communication hub, almost like you would find a community scrape. And they utilize that. And I know from interviewing Hal Blood, he talks about those a lot, and when tracking, and he'll go to those signpost rubs and then try to find a track, and they'll work that elevation line.
Yeah, I remember hearing your podcast with him, about how he'll, like, when he's going to track one, he'll just hit those different signpost rubs. And I've heard him say that on other podcasts too. So
yeah,
I don't go around finding rubs and putting cameras on them. I put them on those signpost rubs that are on heavily traveled runways is what I do. Deer trails or runways, same thing. That's what I mean when I say that.
Yeah, it took me a minute to figure that out.
Deer trail, runway, same thing, same difference. Sorry, guys. Hope I didn't confuse anyone.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
So, Wes, is there anything else you can think of as far as that you think would be helpful for anyone? Obviously, this podcast is not meant to. You're not going to listen to it and go up and kill a buck in the Adirondacks, but giving someone a good place to start. Is there anything else you want to leave everybody with here?
I just want to encourage people to not be intimidated by the big woods, and to just, if you have a desire to want to do that big woods type of hunting, to just do a little bit of research, which New York State, like I said, is good with, on information for state land and where you can park and camp and stuff like that. Do your research and just go for it, because I'm someone that, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, didn't grow up in a hunting family. Parents didn't hunt, grandparents didn't hunt, or whatever. And I've had the opportunity to hunt Tennessee, Arkansas every year since I was 9 years old. But places like Tennessee, Mississippi, and down south and stuff like that, I honestly have no desire to hunt anywhere else in the big woods now. And it took me until, I've been hunting up here since I was 10. I didn't kill my first mature Adirondack buck until I think it was 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm 27. So that was, I just went so many years of wandering around this park and making all the mistakes. And I had to do a lot of learning that maybe other guys, fathers taught them and stuff like that. But, the Adirondacks may seem big, but it's not that big, and it may seem impossible to kill bucks, but you can do it if your heart's in it, because anybody can do anything if you try hard enough. And if I can do it, any of you guys listening who want to hunt big woods deer can do it. And, keep listening to people like Beau, because I listen to podcasts that he puts out and a lot of other people every day on my way to work. And you just have to soak in information and, learn from each other. And that's the fun in it, is challenging yourself, and not just going out and sitting in that same box blind on your, grandfather's farmland. If you have an itch to go out and hunt the big woods, do it. And if there's anything I can do for any of your listeners, if you guys want to get a hold of me and you have any questions on areas to hunt and where to go look up here, there's 6 million acres up here. I'll help you, point you in the right direction. So I want everyone to have a good time and hunt the big woods, because it's very, very rewarding once you do make it happen and get one on the ground.
Yeah. And what you said there too is like, how it took you so long. And I think all of us can relate to that, me included, as far as how long it took to be able to get that to happen. It's not a short, this isn't like a bucket list type thing. It's something that you have to look at as a journey, and it's going to take a while. And look, it took you that long to do it, but you've been on a roll with it, and now you've been consistently been able to kill mature deer. And I think that's such a good point, is no matter if it's the Adirondacks or anywhere else in the big woods, it's going to take time. You can't get frustrated. You just gotta keep putting in the time and learning and doing. Take even if you took one thing from this podcast, you take something from somebody else, and then you have 10 of your own personal experiences, and you apply all that together, and you create your own hunting strategy and your own way of looking at it, because everybody's a little bit different. The way you would hunt, Wes, will be a little bit different than the way I hunt, and the way that the next person hunts. And that's cool about it. You're able to do, create your own method and thoughts behind it. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I literally have to credit, people like you and everyone else. Since I was young and started having an interest in hunting, you listen to people that, have different theories about things, and you read different articles and listen to different podcasts, and you have to soak everything in, put it in perspective, bring it into the woods, apply it, and then from there, see if that works for you or not, or put your own twist on the thought. You know what I mean? And that's how I think I've become the hunter I have, is just time in the woods and, listening to people that, may know a little bit more than you or may not, but what I've learned is that you'll always learn something from someone,
Yeah.
Even if they know a lot less than you, but they hunt, Florida or Alabama or something like that, and like I hunt big woods, but I can learn stuff from the Seek One guys, you know what I mean? That hunt, urban woods, and you hunt out of a saddle with a bow in the big woods, and I spend probably 90% of my time sneaking through the Adirondacks. I'm always on the move, just looking for deer and looking for bucks and sign and stuff like that. And, we all learn from each other. And I think that's what's so great about hunting is we all care and we all want each other to have success, and we learn from each other, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, 100%. And it's inspiring for anyone that's listening, because I feel like I do get a lot of listeners that, didn't grow up in a hunting family or didn't have that, and that you can learn it. It's just, there's so many resources out there now to help you with that learning curve. And then it just takes your own sweat and work ethic to really put the pieces of the puzzle together. And we'll still be learning, when we're 70, 75 years old, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. If we can still hunt, we'll be telling stories at some local diner at 5 a.m. every morning, drinking coffee.
That's what I hope to do.
Yeah. Right.
So Wes, where can everybody find you at if they wanted to reach out questions or check out your guide service? Like, where can they find that stuff?
So if you want to find me, I don't have a website. Guiding is something I do part-time now. Like we talked about, I'm a construction worker. I did do guiding full-time. So you can find me on Facebook at LaBar Guide Service. That's just LABAR Guide Service. And I'm also on Instagram. And from there, on Instagram and Facebook, I have links to my my email, but you can also just shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram. I don't know how many, I booked so many hunts just through Instagram DMs, like at least 4 or 5 hunts. I definitely leave some room for guiding, but I leave a lot of room for myself. Like I said, I'm not out to take on every hunt I can, but if I can take you on, I will. And if not, I have other guides that and guide services that I can highly recommend for you guys. So, but that's LaBar Guide Service, and my name is Wes LaBar. You can reach me on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really do appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, dude. I really appreciate it, man. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and it's just cool that you asked me to come and share a little bit about the Adirondacks. And I hope to have you come up sometime, and so we can show you around here. I think that'd be really cool.
That would be incredible. I'll definitely have to hit you up on that.
Anytime, man. That'd be awesome.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.